When Chiamaka got to the hospital, there were only a few people around. The hospital was just starting to wake up, so she was able to slip into Chinelo's room unnoticed. When she got to Chinelo's room, she quickly opened her bag and brought out a small vial with a syringe. Her actions were hurried and suspicious. She quickly filled the syringe with the substance from the vial and started to put it into the drip that was over Chinelo's bed. "What are you doing, Dr. Chiamaka?" a male voice said, and Dr. Chiamaka froze, her heart hammering in her chest. It's just saline," she stammered, quickly withdrawing the syringe. "I thought it might help her recover." Dr. Nnamdi's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer. "Saline, you say?" He reached for the syringe, his fingers brushing hers as he tried to take it from her hand. "It's not your place to administer anything without my permission, Dr. Chiamaka. You know that." There was an awkward pause, the silence heavy with unspoken accusations. Chiamaka's palms began to sweat. "I'm only trying to help my sister," she insisted, forcing a smile. "I would never do anything to harm her." She quickly put the syringe in her pocket. Dr. Nnamdi held her gaze for a long moment before sighing deeply. "Perhaps, but I'll need to report this to the hospital head. We can't take any chances." As he turned to leave, Chiamaka felt the blood drain from her face. He was going to tell the head of the hospital, and she knew things would only get worse from there. The hospital head, an elderly man with a stern demeanor, sat at his desk, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the wooden surface. He listened intently as Dr. Nnamdi recounted the strange incident with Chiamaka, his sharp eyes not betraying any emotion. After a long silence, he leaned forward. "Install a camera in Chinelo's room, discreetly. We will monitor her sister's actions without her knowledge." Dr. Nnamdi nodded in agreement. The camera will be hidden behind her corner lamp, small enough to escape notice, but powerful enough to capture every move. As Chiamaka returned to her office later that evening, her mind raced. She could still feel Dr. Nnamdi's accusatory gaze burning into her. She had been careful, so careful, but was that enough? What if he suspected more? What if the hospital started watching her? Her office, usually a place of comfort, now felt stifling. The neatly stacked medical journals on her desk seemed to mock her. She was supposed to be the brilliant, successful one, the one who had made something out of her life. Chinelo, on the other hand, had squandered her chances, drifting from one failure to the next. "Why do they still care so much for her?" Chiamaka muttered to herself, pacing the room. The family's concern for Chinelo always gnawed at her, a slow-building resentment she had never quite shaken. She glanced out of the window, her reflection staring back at her, hollow eyes and tense. The flickering streetlights below cast sinister patterns on the pavement, reminding her of the shadows she had been living in for years, shadows of jealousy, resentment, and guilt. Memories flooded her mind. Chiamaka had always been the smart one. As children, their parents had praised her academic achievements, hanging her certificates on the walls for all to see. Yet, somehow, it had always been Chinelo who drew their emotional attention. Despite Chinelo's failures in school, her struggles with math and science, she had a natural charm that endeared her to people. Chiamaka's chest tightened as she recalled their teenage years, while she studied late into the night, aiming to become a doctor. Chinelo was out, laughing with friends, attending social gatherings, and living carefree. And when Chinelo's catering business had finally failed, leaving her financially ruined, it had been Chiamaka who stepped in to offer her a place to stay. "I was doing her a favor," Chiamaka whispered, pacing faster now, her fists clenching. "I was the one who took her in, gave her a fresh start." But the gratitude she had expected never came. Instead, their parents had only lavished more sympathy on Chinelo. Every phone call was about her recovery, her well-being, her future. "And what about me?" Chiamaka's voice rose in the empty office. "I'm the one holding everything together. I'm the successful one. Yet here I am, always overlooked." Her mind twisted with bitterness. Chinelo had always been the golden child, even in failure. And now, here she was, lying in a hospital bed, still the center of attention, while Chiamaka remained the one in the shadows, once again forgotten. Her anger boiled. Her anger boiled over, and Chiamaka sat at her desk, breathing heavily. Her hand trembled as she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small bottle, the poison she had been administering to Chinelo in slow, careful doses over the last several months while she lived with her. It had started innocently enough, a small amount here, a small amount there. She wanted her to die slowly, and based on her calculation, her condition was supposed to get worse on Chiamaka's wedding day. So she was not surprised when Chinelo collapsed at the wedding. Annoying though, the doctors at the hospital had saved her life, she was mad with anger. Chiamaka convinced herself that it wasn't murder, it was just a way to finally end her burden, to free herself from the chains of always being the responsible one, the caregiver. Chinelo had failed in life, and now she was failing in death. Perhaps this was fate's way of balancing the scales. If only they could see me for who I am, she thought, gripping the bottle tighter. If only they realized that I'm the one who deserves their attention. At home, Chiamaka's husband, Emeka, began noticing the subtle changes in her behavior. At first, he thought it was just the stress of Chinelo's condition that weighed on her. She had been working longer hours at the hospital, her temper shorter than usual, and her once warm demeanor had grown cold. But over the weeks, Emeka started noticing things that didn't add up. Chiamaka's obsession with Chinelo's health seemed to go beyond concern. She was constantly checking in on her, making late-night visits to the hospital. But when she talked about her sister, there was a strange detachment in her voice, as if she didn't really care. One evening, Emeka found himself standing at the kitchen window, watching Chiamaka leave the house once again. It was nearly midnight, and she had said she needed to check something at the hospital. But Emeka had a growing suspicion that there was more to her story. Her excuses were becoming flimsier, and her mood swings were erratic. He decided to follow her. The next day, while sitting in her office, Chiamaka's phone rang. The unknown number made her pulse quicken. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "I know what you are doing to Chinelo." Chiamaka's breath caught in her throat. The voice on the other end was distorted, making it impossible to identify who it was. What do you mean?" she stammered, her heart pounding. "If you want to keep this secret, meet me at the old pharmacy at 9 p.m. tomorrow, alone." The line went dead. Chiamaka's hands trembled as she dropped the phone onto her desk. How could someone know? She had been so careful. No one was supposed to find out. Panic surged through her. If the truth came out, everything would be over. Her career, her marriage, her life as she knew it. She couldn't let that happen. The old pharmacy had long been abandoned, its once white walls now stained with grime and neglect. The windows were boarded up, and the faint smell of decay lingered in the air as Chiamaka approached, her footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. Her stomach churned with fear. She clutched her coat tighter around herself, the cold night air biting at her skin. The pharmacy door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dark, empty space inside. A single light bulb flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. In the corner, a hooded figure stood, their back to her. "You came," the voice said, the same distorted tone as the phone call. Chiamaka's throat tightened. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure turned slowly, their face still hidden in shadow. "I know what you've been doing to your sister. I have proof." Chiamaka's heart raced as she took a step back. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me," the figure sneered. "I've seen the way you tried to tamper with her medication. I know you're poisoning her." Fear gripped her, but she forced herself to stand tall. "If you have proof, then show it." The figure reached into their pocket, pulled out a small USB drive. "Everything is on here. Videos, records. All I want is one thing." Chiamaka's mind welled with possibilities. "What do you want?" The figure leaned closer, their breath hot against her ear. 5 million naira and I disappear. No one will ever know. Chiamaka's heart sank. 5 million naira? There was no way she could come up with that kind of money, not without raising suspicion. I will need time, she whispered, her voice shaking. You have 1 week, the figure said, stepping into the shadows. And if I don't get my money, the whole world will know the truth. Unbeknownst to Chiamaka, Emeka had been following her that night. He had seen her enter the old pharmacy. He had watched her confrontation with the hooded figure from a distance, hidden in the shadows. His heart raced as he pieced together what was happening. Chiamaka wasn't just stressed. She was involved in something far more sinister than he had imagined. When she returned home later that night, Emeka pretended to be asleep, his mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and confusion. How could the woman he had loved and trusted be capable of such a thing? What was she hiding from him? The next morning, Emeka could no longer contain his suspicions. As Chiamaka sat at the breakfast table, sipping her coffee, he finally spoke up. He took a deep breath, letting it settle in the silence that hung between them, and then he cleared his throat. Chiamaka, he began, his voice barely more than a whisper, yet sharp as a knife. Where were you last night? Chiamaka's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. She tried to hold his gaze, managing only a brittle smile. I told you, Emeka, I had some late work at the hospital. Emeka's eyes never wavered, his expression disturbingly calm. Funny, because I could have sworn I saw you at the old pharmacy. He paused, watching her face intently. Meeting with someone. The color drained from Chiamaka's face before she masked it. Her smile now strained. Emeka, are you spying on me now? Is this what it has come to? Do you really think so little of me? He leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate. I think there's something you're not telling me, and I have every right to know, especially if it concerns your sister's well-being. His gaze was unrelenting. Do you have something to do with Chinelo's condition? Her heart stilled, her mind racing. She felt cornered, desperate, and she could see it now in his eyes. Disappointment, suspicion, maybe even disgust. It was a look that chilled her, a look that made her realize her life was falling apart. Finally, she forced a smile. She forced out a laugh, shaky and hollow. Emeka, that's ridiculous. I would never hurt my own sister. Emeka's jaw clenched. I used to think I could trust you with my life, Chiamaka. But now, He shook his head, standing slowly. Maybe I was wrong. As he turned, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, Chiamaka sat frozen. The fear gnawed at her. Her carefully constructed life was slipping away through her fingers, and she knew she had to act fast. Desperation clawed at her, and over the next few nights, she paced the floor, consumed by one thought: money. She needed 5 million naira, but every path seemed like a dead end. She couldn't take that much from the account without him noticing, and any sale of assets would trigger unwanted questions. Then a thought silted into her mind, dark and alluring: an insurance payout. Chinelo had a life insurance policy, with her, Chiamaka, as the beneficiary. The payout was sizable enough to save her from the blackmailer if her sister's condition worsened just enough and she died. She could justify the claim. It was a dangerous game, but she had no choice. Meanwhile, Dr. Nnamdi couldn't ignore the feeling clawing at him after seeing Chiamaka's odd behavior. Something about her visits to Chinelo's room didn't sit right. Driven by unease, he checked the hospital's camera footage. As he reviewed the videos, his brow furrowed. There was Chiamaka, frequently checking Chinelo's IV drip, moving around the room with nervous glances towards the door. It was subtle, but it was enough to spark a growing suspicion in his mind. After conferring with his superiors, they decided to take the matter further. There was too much at stake. Just as Chiamaka thought her plan was foolproof, she was interrupted at her office by a knock on the door. Standing in the doorway was a detective, Inspector Adeleke, his expression unreadable, but eyes sharp as a hawk. Dr. Chiamaka, he said, his tone uncomfortably polite. I'm here to discuss your sister's case. Her heart hammered, but she forced a smile. Of course, Inspector. How can I assist? We've received concerning information about her condition, possibly some irregularities. He paused, letting the tension settle in the room. We believe there may be some foul play involved. She feigned shock, her mind racing. Who had tipped them off? The blackmailer? Emeka? Dr. Nandi? She answered his questions carefully, but she knew from his gaze that he was unconvinced. As Inspector Adeleke left, he gave her a final knowing look. We'll be in touch, Dr. Chiamaka. And if there's anything you would like to share, anything at all, now would be the time. That evening, Emeka confronted her, his face hard and unreadable. I've given you a chance, Chiamaka, he said, his voice trembling with controlled fury. But this ends here. Either you tell me the truth about what's happening, or I'll go to the authorities myself. Her face cracked, and in that moment, her desperation spilled over. Fine, she hissed. You want the truth? I will give you the truth. She started bitterly. It is always Chinelo this, Chinelo that. Chinelo is failing at school. How can we help her? Chinelo's business is not doing well. How can we help her? Chinelo has always been the golden child, the one everyone loves, the one that always needs help. And me, I am the one who picks up the pieces. I deserve some peace, some recognition. Emeka stared at her, horror creeping into his eyes. My God, who are you? You are not the woman I thought I married. He turned away, slamming the door behind him. For the first time, Chiamaka felt the weight of her actions pressing down, suffocating her. Days later, her phone rang, piercing the quiet. It was a hospital head. Dr. Chiamaka, we need you to come in immediately. There's something you need to see. Arriving at the hospital, she was shown into a dim room where a screen was set up. There, looping footage played, showing her in Chinelo's room, fiddling with the IV drip. The head of the hospital's voice was low. This footage has been handed over to the police, Chiamaka. I'm sorry, but there's no choice. Her heart thundered as she realized what was happening. She had been caught, trapped in her own web. As the police led her out in handcuffs, she saw Emeka watching from the doorway, his face a mixture of sadness and relief. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw Chinelo herself, awake, standing in the hallway, watching the scene unfold with a calm that chilled her to the bone. Chinelo awake? How? When? Chinelo's eyes met Chiamaka's, and her voice was steady. Maybe now, she said softly, you understand that love isn't something you take, it is something you earn. And with those words, Chinelo turned away, leaving her sister to face the consequences of her jealousy and the destruction she had sown. And if you are wondering why the poison Chinelo had administered at the wedding did not work, it was because she ate of the poisoned food, which had cancelled the charm and also contributed to her fainting on the day of the wedding. And as for other consequences of her eating the poisoned food, I guess time will tell. It is funny that while Chinelo felt jealous of Chiamaka for being the perfect child, Chiamaka also was jealous of Chinelo for being the one everyone pitied and for having to be the one to pick up the pieces of Chinelo's failures. Funny how life works. This suspenseful story of Chiamaka's downfall reveals several important lessons. 1. Jealousy can be destructive. Chiamaka's jealousy toward her sister Chinelo slowly consumes her, driving her to extreme measures. Instead of celebrating her own success, Chiamaka becomes resentful, leading her down a dark path. The story warns against letting jealousy poison relationships and cloud one's judgment. 2. Honesty is the foundation of trust. Emeka's trust in Chiamaka is shattered when he uncovers her lies and deception. This demonstrates that lies, no matter how small or well hidden, can unravel trust in relationships, leaving only suspicion and bitterness. 3. Karma and accountability. Chiamaka's choices eventually caught up with her. Despite her attempts to cover her actions, the hidden camera exposes her intentions. The story reminds us that sooner or later, harmful actions come to light and accountability is inevitable. And 4. The true meaning of love and family. Chinelo's final words to Chiamaka convey a powerful message. Love cannot be taken or forced. It is earned through genuine care and trust. Chiamaka's desire for love and recognition led her to manipulate and harm her sister. But true love cannot be rooted in envy or control. If you enjoyed this story, please check out the other stories on this channel. And if you are yet to watch part 1 of this story, you can just click here to watch it. Thank you and see you in the next one.